Hello, welcome to the AppleInsider Podcast. I'm William Gallagher. Our sponsor this week is Claude by Anthropic. More about that in a while. And I'm joined by Wes Hilliard, as ever. And of course, you know, podcasts is the bit where I say, Wes, how are you? But no. Let's skip straight back into the conversation. Because, Wes, I'm obviously in Britain and you're obviously in America. You do in America have a humble pie phrase, don't you? At all?
Humble pie. Yeah, I've heard that before.
Okay. Are we at the stage where you might need some dessert over the iPhone Fold? Because there's like a ton of rumours, and you said there wouldn't be.
Well, see, here's the problem, is there are still no product leaks, period. No assembly footage, no device, nothing. We got a video of someone holding something that looked like one, which was clearly fake, and now they've claimed it was an April Fool's joke. So
yeah,
we're back to square one. There is a ton to get to here, and then I wrote a whole thing. I'll tell you about what it started out as, and we evolved the piece as we went along. But wait a minute. Not.
This sounds like you're trying to just distance yourself from previous. No, you're not. Okay.
I'm doubling down, William.
Oh, you're committed. Okay. All right then. Convince me.
So, basically, this week started with a rumor from a somewhat okay source, Instant Digital, saying iPhone Fold had entered manufacturing tests. Finally, this was a month after the iPhone 18 Pro and Pro Max had entered their validation testing, so a little late, but better late than never. Again, no product leak, no component leak, no real... I mean, we saw a CAD, but it was no different from the 3D printed models we saw before. Shortly after this, we'll get to it, but there was dummy models, which still look like the CAD, which still look like the 3D model. I'm not 100% on those. Those are mostly red herrings to distract us. The actual thing that I want to see, that I will repeat here, is I want to see a component. I want to see that camera module. I want to see the hinge. I want to see someone claiming with a shaky, grainy, shadowy footage of a random plant in China of an iPhone Fold component, and we have yet to see that. That happened last year for iPhone Air. We had seen the whole device by April. So it's odd to me that we still have yet to even see a component, and it has now entered this mass production testing, which means they're making thousands of them, and we still have seen no leaks. But then, after this entering the manufacturing test rumor came, not hours later, same day, we got a leak from someone from Nikkei Asia, which is a source. So they've previously got photos or something, rumors, about a display being made in a factory, and they called it an iMac. It was a studio display, right? So they've made mistakes like that before, but this particular rumor is... Apple told suppliers, they have sent out a warning that mass production may be delayed of the iPhone Fold. Now, I don't know how you misinterpret that or get that wrong. There's always a possibility that they could just be lying. Who knows? That seems a little unlikely. So that report comes out. And then everyone's going crazy. Apple stock dropped 7%. And a couple hours later, Bloomberg puts out a report, because at the same time, I saw a couple of places do this, Reuters and a couple, maybe Ars Technica. They said the iPhone Fold could be delayed by months because this Nikkei Asia report, which is what the report said. We were talking December, January at this point, not October. And then they were saying, like Gurman said, which is not what he said. So he puts out a report saying, actually, no, the iPhone Fold is still fully on time for a September release, according to his sources. So now it's a whole mishmash of crazy. Who's right, who's wrong? I'm going to say, now, William, I'll let you say something before I get to it, because I have a feeling I have an understanding of the order of operations here, what exactly happened with all of this. But what do you think of all of it?
I really want to know. There's one thing I could just hopefully usefully interject. When you're saying that about government said they go, no, it didn't, all that stuff. That the video that was going around, you mentioned the April Fool's joke. When that first was going around the internet, it was being presented as this is it, this is real, and it clearly wasn't. I was contacted by the man who actually made the video, and he'd made it as an April Fool's, and was really annoyed that people were clipping out bits and stringing it together into something like that. So yeah, things start in crazy places and they spread, but it doesn't leave me understanding where anything is. I feel I'm still at the stage of I'll wait for Apple, but you know better. Well, I mean, that's the wrong way of phrasing it. You think you can see what's happening throughout this mess.
Instant Digital is a Chinese leaker who gets their information direct from the supply chain. They probably have family that works in a factory, is my guess, or some cousin or friend, something. That's usually how these kinds of leaks happen. A lot of these social media leaks are kind of, family related, and they make money on the side because of it, or advertising. There's a whole orchestration going on there, a whole business. So best not to get into that too much. By the way, speaking of leakers, I'll inject this here. If you see Majin Buu anywhere, that's fake. He is gone. He doesn't exist. There's a new account. They took it's Majin Buu official is the tag that it was originally. It's the same tag without the L on the end. So clearly fake. So just keep that in mind.
Wow.
But anyway,
sorry,
Instant Digital.
I've seen Apple fakes where the L of Apple is a 1 and something like that. I mean, it's clever, actually, isn't it? But I would have been fooled by that. I hadn't seen it yet. Okay, sorry.
Yeah, I saw several publications publishing Majin Buu, and I was like, don't give the fake person attention. They have 4 followers. Now they have 400 because of this one article. Anyway, so this is my supposition. So the leaker in China, Instant Digital, probably gets information late, or probably gets information and holds on to it to protect their source, right? So you can't just get information and leak it immediately. You got to confirm it. You got to hold on to, there's all these things, because if you're just putting it out as you get it, you're in danger of exposing your source, because Apple could be putting out fake leads. Apple has all these methods for catching leakers. So I think the iPhone Fold entered manufacturing earlier in the month, even a couple weeks ago. And he only just leaked out that they had entered this thing. But Nikkei Asia, Apple alerted the supply chain, and then the supply chain, this isn't, some inside leak from a family member or friend or whatever. This is the supply chain. They immediately contacted the press and said, hey, Apple just told me that this is getting delayed. So the same day that we get that one report, we get the other, but one information was delayed while the other was instant, right?
Right.
It's kind of funny that it wasn't Instant Digital who have the instant information. But anyway, Nikkei Asia says that the iPhone Fold could be delayed months because of a manufacturing issue they've encountered during testing. They didn't specify what that was. But later, we also found out that Apple has to rely entirely on Samsung, that no one else can make this display. Yeah. That could be what it was, that maybe they couldn't overcome this limitation. Hard to say.
Oh, no, hang on a second. No, I wrote about that Samsung thing. It appeared, the story was, as far as we know, that Samsung laid out the terms to Apple, basically take it or leave it, it's us, isn't it? Because Apple had been talking or wanted to talk to BOE, but the foldable screens they do for other smartphones are in some way considered inadequate for the iPhone Fold, and LG Display would have been the other one. They aren't apparently even doing any foldable stuff, so it was Samsung or nobody. Samsung said, right, well, tough, you've got us and you're only having us for 3 years, which means I presume they're charging a lot for it, because part of the story was also a division of Samsung has to justify why it's helping out a rival to Samsung. So the story I understood was Samsung's doing well out of this, Apple's okay. But you think that there might have been actually a problem with that screen?
It's the only other piece that we can grab onto, because again, no one's talking about what the issue might have been. I don't know if it was the display, it could have been the hinge, it could have been anything. But Gurman coming out, I think maybe the next day, very close together, it's all within 24 hours. I think he put out his report without any real new information. I believe he was trying to cover his narrative and make sure that it was being accurately reported that he was saying the iPhone Fold was coming in September or October. Because that's what he keeps saying. He keeps hedging. He's not saying September. Because some people got this story from Gurman and reported, oh, he's saying it's on time, September, yada, yada. No, he's saying it could be a month delay at most, like iPhone 10, but it is September or October, not this multi-month. He called Nikkei Asia's reporting flawed. Now, again, I don't know how you get a supply chain report and misinterpret it enough that it would be entirely flawed. The only way this could be being misinterpreted is perhaps Apple only alerted some of the supply chain because they over-indexed on some products, but then I don't know, like the warning was specifically mass production might be delayed. So it's a whole mess. My take on this is we don't know. We're not going to know until September when Apple announces the iPhone Fold. Their entire fall and their advertising and their marketing plans, everything is built around this new foldable. And so Apple's going to do everything in its power to make sure it gets this thing out there. It can't afford to have a delay. William, imagine if it's December or January when the iPhone Fold is ready. Right? That would be catastrophic for a lot of reasons. So I wrote a story about this. It started as, and I'll share because I wanted to hardline it. I really wanted to hardline it, but Mike asked me to take a step back, and I agree with the changes we made, to be clear. But I said iPhone Fold doesn't need to exist, but Apple will release it anyway as the headline. It was originally more like the iPhone Fold is in trouble and Apple should let it die, right? So, okay. Like it's a step back from that, but the sentiment is the same. I make it clear in the piece that if I had control of Apple, I would never release this device because it doesn't make sense.
Actually, let me start there. Why doesn't it make sense? Samsung's been doing foldable since 2019, I think, somewhere around then. So, I mean, I've seen only a few kind of in the wild, but I've seen them. They're being sold. They do a job, presumably, and people seem to like them when they've got them. You've argued before that you spent all that money, you're going to have to like it, but...
What job is it doing?
Well, I vacillate, whether I'm interested or not. It's usually affected by what I hear the latest price is going to be. But when it seems affordable, I really like the idea of it replacing my iPad. I mean, I have a large iPad, I have a small iPad, and like a mini iPad for various things. That sounds strange when you put it like that. Just get one, William. But the ability to, I mean, I'll go somewhere and a meeting is delayed and I will write on my iPhone. But if I could instead have iPad-sized screen, a proper keyboard attached, yeah. Also watching certain things, reading. I'm scrabbling, but there's a few things to scrabble over a bit.
The dummy unit that we got appears smaller than what you're describing, because you're describing an iPhone that opens to an iPad mini. This appears to be smaller than an iPad mini when it's open. And what's more is the length and width of it. If you open it and watch a 16:9 video, that video is going to be the same size as watching it on a iPhone that isn't the Fold because of black bars, right?
Right.
So you're not gaining anything in that aspect. I mean, maybe 4:3 video would look better, right? If you want to watch some 90s cartoons. But
I am researching a book on a 1970s TV show. That would look great.
There you go.
There you go.
I mean, 4:3's 4:3's good on an iPad. I like watching some old TV on an iPad. But there's so many things. Okay, so let's start from the top. What purpose does the iPhone Fold serve? What is it doing, right? The idea that was pitched in 2019 when Samsung released its device is that it is a smartphone when it's shut and it is a tablet when it is open. Great. Mm-hmm. that took 6-7 years now to really come to full fruition. It's less than 3% of the market. I think I'm getting that number wrong. I think it's 3% of a segmented, like, winter holiday quarter, and less than 1% of the market. Like, there's some crazy math here, but it is let's just call it a very small percent of the market, like fractionally to the point that it doesn't exist. It's
well, I mean, 3%, say, of Apple iPhone sales is. I mean, that's the kind of sales and other companies would weep to get. So insignificant, relatively. But
I'm not sure that it would translate to 3% of iPhone sales is the problem, because you have to imagine the smartphone market is the whole world, and there's hundreds of millions, if not a billion, smartphones sold a year. Apple accounts for a decent chunk of that, but even then, Apple is only 25% of the global smartphone market. So. Right. If you look at these numbers and keep slicing it down, $2,000 to $2,500 for a foldable, and a lot of people are making them now. Well, not a lot, but we have the usual suspects: Xiaomi, Samsung, Oppo, and Honor. Like, these guys in China are pumping these things out because, as we've learned from go read the Apple in China book, the entire modus operandi of China is bring in the engineers, learn their craft, hand it over to state-sponsored companies, let them make their version of the smartphone, and sell it in China. That's their whole thing. That's what they do.
Wow.
And so that's why we see foldables cropping up, because Samsung is developing foldables. So China is also developing foldables. They're the same market. The problem is it still hasn't penetrated the market. Even with these multiple OEMs entering foldables, we're still talking about less than 3%. And that's over 7 years it took to carve out even that niche. And these people are very hopeful. We've seen a lot of market analysts say Apple is going to save foldables. Apple is going to create the foldable market. They're going to come in and turn 3% into 20% within 5 years. They're talking maddeningly crazy, outrageous numbers for a $2,500 smartphone. So,
well, I was going to say exactly that to you, except the example is there were many tablets before the iPad came out, and boom, everybody wanted an iPad because it was tablets done right. iPod would be this. iPhone would be the same. They have a form on this.
I have no doubt that Apple is capable of making foldables popular. I have no doubt that they can announce this and make people want a foldable, and then look down market to the cheaper, Chinese alternatives, right? Like, that is absolutely in Apple's power. They've done it before. They'll do it again. That is not beyond reality. That's not what I'm saying. But anyway, the point is the market really isn't there. It's so low volume that iPhone owners, like iPhones people, Apple people, will buy this device. I don't think it's not going to be zero, but it's going to be really low volumes. I think it's an experimental device. I think this could very well be an iMac Pro situation. This could be a one and done. We'll see. But anyway, the point of the piece, to get back to that I wrote, was to, first off, to explain everything that's been going on with all these rumors. So I've echoed some of what I've said here on the show, but it's a flawed device because, as we've discussed toaster fridges before, Tim Cook said this about Windows PCs in 2012. It's not a good iPhone, and it's not a good iPad. It's probably an okay foldable, but what does that even mean? Because when the device is closed, first off, it's going to need a whole new UI paradigm. I know there's scaling involved in iOS now, and the UI can stretch to fit. iOS has never had a short, squat display like this before. So I don't know if that external display is going to even be fully interactable in the way that we're expecting. It could be a full iPhone experience. I don't know. But it's like 2/3. Like, imagine if you cut off an iPhone at the camera plateau. That's how much display you have when it's shut. Right?
Okay.
That is a squat display. So fitting the UI in there, when it's been designed, the iOS has been designed for years to be this really tall, right, thing. And this isn't running iPadOS. And even if it did, the UI would be too small. This is a tiny, tiny, tiny display. It's a corner pocket of the iPad mini when it's shut. So, okay, fine. It's basically just a standby display until it's open. Let's assume that external display is barely even being used, and Apple expects you to open it every single time, or maybe the display is so awkward you have to open it each time. I don't know. I'm just assuming that is a very short, weird display. I don't know what Apple's going to do with it. But you open it, and you're about as tall as an iPhone Pro Max. Maybe a smidge taller, but you're wider by about a quarter, right? So you gained a little bit in one direction, basically. It's a wider device. It basically, maybe it'll display 2 squat iPhone apps side by side. Cool. There'll be a crease in the middle. They can utilize that crease to have 2 apps side by side. Maybe it's a landscape device because of how the cameras are positioned. They expect you to use it in landscape. It's going to open like a passport or a billfold, not necessarily going to open up into a taller phone, right? So, cool. Maybe they'll figure it out. But like I said before, there's no advantage to video. The apps are going to have to adopt a whole new form factor for one device that's going to sell in the tens versus the millions. Switch it to portrait mode, William. Where do you hold it? Are you gripping it by?
Yes.
Are you gripping it by the rear display, or are you gripping it by the camera bump? It's just such an awkward device, and no MagSafe.
Well, this is something. Hang on, I want to ask you about that. But when you said that about the smaller size being folded, there's an argument that there are people who like small iPhones, the iPhone 12 mini and 13 mini. I mean, they were both successful and failures. They didn't sell enough for Apple, but compared to most other phones, they did really well, and people who liked them loved them. Is this not a way to kind of hit both markets? It's small until you want it to be big.
That's the point of the device. No, that's the point. That's the whole reason foldables exist, is small until it's big. And if the dummy unit is anything to go by, the thickness of this thing is paper thin. It is very thin, right? It's thinner even than the iPhone Air.
Yeah.
And when it's folded shut, it is maybe a little thicker than the Pro Max, right? Like they're definitely doing their best with thickness here. But I still think it's a bit awkward because it's squat and wide, right? I guess it's meant to be a rear pocket device, like you put it in your back pocket. I can't see it being very comfortable in your front pocket, but it might fit. Again, it's so much wider than an iPhone, even when it's shut. So, well, beyond that, like this is a fully Apple's problem to pitch, right? I'm not going to do Apple's pitch deck. They're going to convince us. Maybe they make me like it. I don't know. Apple has the capability of making me want this thing. But the problem is the chief concern that I have. There's 3 that I have. No MagSafe. Everything in my life is MagSafe, right? So if I bought this phone, I would basically have to redo my house. It's that bad. Like my bedside table, the mount I'm using for the camera, like there's so many things.
Well, you bought a new house at the wrong time then, didn't you? Clearly.
Yeah, I bought a MagSafe house. No, it's just everything is MagSafe. And so then I'm just going to go buy an iPhone without MagSafe? That's madness. But on top of that, there's 2 more things. Yeah. Touch ID instead of Face ID, because you're not going to put 2 Face ID modules on this. It needs to authenticate in every orientation, every direction. The only way you're going to do that is with Touch ID. And then we are lacking a camera system that is pro. So I'm paying $2,500 for a worse camera experience on an iPhone. That is counterintuitive to me. So,
well, actually, I think I was going to make a very similar point. The idea that the most expensive iPhone, the top of the range now, it might even be called the iPhone Ultra to put it over above the Pro
I'm going to
Max
ignore that
one.
rumor.
Yeah, is the one that doesn't have a base. Isn't that funny how you get so used to something? MagSafe isn't a basic feature. It's a great thing and it was difficult to do. It's really good. And here I'm going, base level. But it doesn't have that. I had not thought about the cameras. Except that, no, tell a lie. You put this in my mind when you're talking about how you hold it, how you take things. I shoot a lot of videos. I've got a YouTube channel. And it's about using Apple Gear. So... because it's relevant. I use Apple Gear to do it. I use an iPhone, but also because I can't afford a DSLR camera or something for it. I put my iPhone 18, my iPhone 16 Pro Max in a little mount. In fact, actually, I just had to replace it. I put it in one of these, grips it on the tripod, away off I go. I already know that if I buy an iPhone Fold, I'm not going to wedge it in one of these. I'm going to keep my old iPhone film on that because it just feels like it would be too flimsy or too big.
So you wouldn't have the option of a proper grip because you're squeezing the sides of a foldable. I don't know what that would look like.
Yeah.
MagSafe isn't an option. Maybe the dummy unit's got it wrong and it does have MagSafe awkwardly on one side. I mean, my brain wants to imagine a hinge where you wave it around and it's just flapping like a book. I don't think it's like that. It's probably a very stiff hinge. It probably locks in place. So I honestly don't see why. Well, I can see why MagSafe would be an issue because it's all the weight would be on one side. The only time you could use MagSafe is if it's shut, and sure, I guess, but MagSafe is primarily a charging feature, not a mounting feature. So perhaps Apple just maybe the battery isn't even on that side of the phone. Who knows? It's hard to say. Maybe the thinness. If I had to guess, it's the thinness, and they needed to save every millimeter, and part of that was removing the magnets for MagSafe. But that is such a fundamental premium part of owning an iPhone now is I have MagSafe everywhere. Now, again, they're not selling this device to me. They're selling this device to people. There are people who don't even know what MagSafe is.
Sure.
This could very much be an excellent device. My thing about this, actually, that I've thought about, if this was the iPad mini, I would be okay with it. Maybe a little bigger. And I would probably even buy one, because I like that. That is an interesting device to me as an iPad. Mm-hmm. But I cannot wrap my head around this as an iPhone, because, again, you're getting the lesser, it's not as good of an iPhone experience, but as a secondary device, as a little, put it in my, breast pocket of my jacket, or, carry it in my bag and have it as a little, reading tablet. It can literally open like a book, and maybe the hinge opens halfway and I can flip through pages. There's a lot of cool ideas here. I could use it as a Nintendo DS emulator. There's a lot of ways this could be interesting. I do not want to let my annoyance with how this is being built break into the fact that I do believe these foldables are cool devices, and I do want to play with one, but I'm trying to reconcile how this is a premium iPhone. How is this replacing this device that does so much every day? It's a fundamentally different device, and I would almost rather have my iPhone that is my professional camera and this foldable device as my everything else. And that's stupid, but perhaps Apple finally just needs to sell a camera so I can buy devices with worse cameras. I don't know.
I do particularly want to ask you about cameras, but there's one thing I've got to raise. It sounds to me like this might be the first time we've spoken where you accept that the iPhone Fold is coming. You previously had to, you said it again today, we haven't seen any bits, but you're talking as if we're getting it.
Okay, so this is what we did need to get to that. So this is where I stand currently. Yes, we needed to get to that eventually. So this is where I am today on, is the iPhone Fold even going to arrive? And part of the reason I wrote this story, again, the reason why it started off as Apple should just let it die, is because if the Nikkei Asia report is 100% accurate, and they're not flubbing it or they're not exaggerating, and they have encountered issues that could set back the production by months, Apple releasing the iPhone Fold in December or January goes against everything they've planned for 2026. They want a split iPhone release. They want a slow rollout so that they have more buying power for chips and batteries and components, and they want to smooth out the peaks and valleys of iPhone buying season across the winter and the spring. So if you suddenly throw a $2,000 iPhone in the middle of that, first off, everyone who was going to buy the expensive phone already bought one in September.
Yes.
Do you announce the iPhone Fold in September and then release it in December? That seems like you're also undercutting potential sales. There's a lot of weirdness here.
That's the Osborne effect. Yeah.
Yes, but I mean, I don't think that it's not going to sell in very high volumes. I think the report said something like 7 or 8 million units is expected total in the first bit of sales.
Report said, a few months ago, Ming-Chi Kuo was saying, I can't remember if it was between 6 and 10. It might have been in calendar 26, calendar 27, it went up to 10. But then that latest report you mentioned earlier was saying that it was down to like 2 or 3 on the assumption that Apple was being a bit more cautious about such an expensive device. But yeah.
So first off, releasing an iPhone in December is just weird. Holiday season's over. People spent their money. Tax season hasn't begun yet. New iPhones are coming in a few more months. We're getting the iPhone 18 and 18e and possibly another iPhone Air, which, obviously is the lesser iPhone Fold as far as if you want to go buy hierarchical structures. The iPhone Fold is above the iPhone Air, not above the iPhone Pro. That's how I view it. So
okay. It used to be so simple. Here's the iPhone. Okay.
There's a branch now. iPhone Pro, iPhone Air. So this is the problem. If Apple can't get the iPhone Fold out in September, I can't. I know their marketing's already ready for it. Maybe they push it anyway, and they just say, "Forget it. Let's get it out there." But there is a world where Apple says, "This isn't going to work. We need to wait until next September." And iron out all of the manufacturing details, get it ready to go, and push it to 2027. If that happens, William, it will be the death of the foldable industry.
Wow. Okay, need to absorb that for a second. This episode is brought to you by Claude from Anthropic. And look, this is going to sound like a really trivial example of how useful it is. I mean, given everything Claude can do, but it helped me hugely. I'm due to deliver a sample chapter of a book to a publisher, and this is a particularly key fact. It's a non-fiction book. A particularly key fact that I've really got to have in there, and it's one of those where you know it. You just can't prove it, and I had to not only prove it, citing sources, but I couldn't just write this thing out. I absolutely, totally had to quote the people involved. Claude found them in moments. Google didn't. And actually, I didn't either. I'm deep into this research. I've got my own sources. I've exhausted the Internet Archive and newspaper collections, and I could not find this thing. Yet there it was. There's not much, actually, but Claude found the only 2 references to this thing online, and they are enough for what I need. Searching. It should not be the case that a simple search is better with AI, but there it was. Fact found, paragraphs written. In the moment, actually, after you and I are done talking, I'll do a last read over, but then emailing the chapter out onto the next job. Anthropic says that Claude is the AI for minds that don't stop at good enough. It's the collaborator that actually understands your entire workflow and that it thinks with you, not for you. And yeah, it actually does. This fact I was looking for, well, it doesn't matter what it is, but it wasn't directly related to a video project I produced, but there was a kind of a bit of overlap. So when I was doing that search, Claude didn't just give me the answer. It suggested which result I had found might be most useful for my 58 Keys YouTube videos. Now, I did not prompt it with the name 58 Keys, but it knew. It knew because I've used Claude about that YouTube series before. Even I don't remember what I've asked it before, but Claude does, and it put these things together for me. So, if you're researching topics, or whether you're debugging code at midnight or strategizing your next business move, Claude extends your thinking to tackle the problems that matter. Ready to tackle bigger problems? Sign up for Claude today at claude.ai/AppleInsider. That's claude.ai/AppleInsider. And do check out Claude Pro, which includes access to all of the features mentioned in today's episode. Claude.ai/AppleInsider. And thanks to Claude for Anthropic for supporting the Apple Insider podcast and for helping me get my book sample finished. All right, I've absorbed that. Apple finally joins the the folding phone industry and destroys it. You don't think that's what they're deliberately setting out to do?
It's a double-edged sword, William, right? Mm. If Apple releases an iPhone Fold in September of 2026, great. All thumbs up. Everyone's ready for it. The foldable companies that make foldables, they're gearing up manufacturing now. They're making more units than they ever have before. They're getting ready for Apple to release one because they know Apple's power in the market. They're going to make people want foldables. Xiaomi is currently making an identical clone to the iPhone Fold based on this dummy model that came out. They're going to be ready in China for the millions of devices in demand that aren't iPhones, right. Except if Apple doesn't release their smartphone because of marketing and because of lining up, it gets pushed back for whatever reason to 2027. Mm. All of this work will have been for nothing. All of this inventory will be sitting there. The demand won't be there. Companies could suffer greatly. Like the supply chain, everything around this iPhone Fold. They expect, I'm telling you, these analysts, go read some of these reports. They're expecting like a 30% bump in foldable sales because of iPhone. If that doesn't come and they were prepared for that, that is devastating. It could actually kill this market entirely because a whole year goes by and they can't sell these devices in the numbers they were expecting, and now they don't have the money to prepare for next year's ramp up. Some of these brands could drop off of the foldable train entirely, and by the time we get to iPhone in the fall of 2027, we've got Apple Smart Glasses. We've potentially got Apple Vision Pro 2. We've got more devices that solve the I want more display, less pocket space coming in the next year. Apple could arrive at next year and then ultimately can the whole foldable project because it's just taken so long that the better devices have arrived to replace it. But that's my own supposition. I do believe Apple really wants to release this device. They want to, but if the supply chain is against them or if the market's against them, they won't. They're intelligent enough to call it quits. They haven't mass produced this thing yet. There aren't 8 million sitting in a warehouse right now. Right, they might have 100 of them going through validation tests, but yes, the research went into it. But anyway, the point is, this could be devastating to the foldable market, and by the time Apple wants to enter it in 2027, it could be just Samsung out there selling these things.
I was thinking of Samsung. Is it
Google
not
Pixel?
Google Pixel. Isn't there a version of this where rivals can crow that they've got foldables when Apple still haven't? Because they've
been doing that for 7 years, William.
That's true, and nobody's noticed really. Okay,
they're neat. They're for people with more disposable income than people who buy premium smartphones. Right? You can get a Galaxy Ultra, whatever, for $2,000, just like you can get an iPhone for $2,000. I mean, my iPhone has a terabyte of memory. I'm pretty sure it's over the $2,000 mark. Right. So it's not necessarily the price, because there are people buying $2,000 smartphones. It's the utility. And I think just because one of the foldables happens to run iOS, I do think that has power, but I don't know. They're expecting miracles out there, and I'm not sure that that's what they're going to get. Right, Apple Vision Pro didn't accelerate Meta Quest sales. If anything, it impacted their sales. So it'll be interesting to see where this all ends up. We could end up in a world where Apple is competing with itself with smart displays and foldables all at once. Apple loves that kind of cannibalism.
Sure.
So to reiterate my point, we still haven't seen any component leaks. It's a bad sign. Apple's clearly having problems getting this thing mass produced. There is always the chance of a delay until we hear otherwise. Until we hear mass production has begun and it has been confirmed by reliable sources, there's nothing else to say about this. It could just not release this year. I'm not saying it won't release this year. There's definitely, it's the possibilities more in that favor now than it has been, but there's always that chance, William. So my preference would be that Apple skip it, but they are clearly devoted to this device at this point for whatever reason. Someone at that company wants this thing out there.
I know what it was. It's when you mentioned MetaQuest. It put in my head, like an hour before the Apple Vision Pro was announced, Meta leaked its 5-year plan of these wondrous devices. Actually, we're several years in now and we haven't seen any of them. What a shock. Nope. I'm looking forward to seeing Samsung announcing future foldables, and that will tell me that things are really coming. But,
it's... Well, trifolds. Samsung's trifold sold out instantly because they were able to make 6 of them before they ran out of components, and apparently,
is that the one that they've pulled from sale or something?
Yeah.
Was it?
So they're putting it back on sale on Friday.
Oh, okay.
For
Phew.
Probably another 15 minutes. They'll sell out again. They're difficult devices to manufacture. This is like. This is not your average. This isn't it's hard because, it's using a rare metal, or it's hard because of scarcity, or no, it's hard because they're literally difficult to make. And I don't know, it will be interesting to watch this unfold. That's all I'm saying.
Okay. I tell you, we seem to spend with a lot of attention on the iPhone Fold. Let's go completely the different way to other iPhones. In fact, iPhone. I've got to say it this way. I'm really sorry. iPhones in space. If you don't remember the Muppet Show, that is, I just look stupid. If you do remember it,
no.
Anyway, this was the talk of the week. It seemed to me, and I thought so often I do this. Something happened. I think of you. The Artemis crew reportedly using iPhones at least some of the time to make some of those gorgeous shots of the Earth. Apple must be beside. I mean, imagine these shot on iPhone billboards that are going to come out of that. Except, is it real? Because there are some other non-iPhone cameras. Why wouldn't?
So the moon landing was faked. We've never left our atmosphere, and the Earth is flat. So clearly, no.
Right. That flag was CGI. Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's all made in a Hollywood basement. So.
I remember Capricorn 1, but okay, yeah.
So first off, fun tidbit, the Apollo mission, right, was what got us to the moon. Artemis is Apollo's sister. Also...
Oh, right,
yeah, and this is us returning to the moon. And there's a woman on board, right? And it's the furthest a woman's ever been from planet Earth. So it's all very fun. I love the naming.
That's crazy that only now is a woman going... Well, I suppose nobody's gone this far. Okay, but all right. I did not make the Apollo-Artemis connection. Artemis is also the name of Andy Weir's second book between The Martian and Project Hail Mary, and it's not as good, but that's another story. Okay, that's set on the moon. It all works together. Okay, so they're off having a nice time, going around the moon. Great that they're back there-ish.
So the photos that you've seen, the photos of Earth... where you can see the atmosphere and the aurora. That was taken on a Nikon D5, a very, very nice camera.
Right.
There are specific equipment on board for cataloging things. The iPhones that were brought on board are personal devices that were brought for video and photos, but they do not have any Wi-Fi or Bluetooth connection. If you're going to get a photo off of them, they have to be connected directly to something and then sent to Earth that way. So we have seen
they forgot their USB-C cables, didn't they?
Right.
Okay.
We have seen photos taken on iPhone, but most of them are interior shots. My favorite I've shot on iPhone photos are the ones, if you've seen a photo of, forgive me, I don't know their names, but the female astronaut looking to the Earth from below, that is an iPhone photo. And they actually captured each of the astronauts looking out the window on an iPhone. So those will be beautiful billboards I'm sure Apple will make at some point. But yes, the most striking photos were definitely captured on a DSLR, actual big lens camera. Nothing against the iPhone, but man, I don't see it capturing the Earth in that way. The photos of the moon with the Earth in the background are probably my favorite photos, but yes.
Yeah, but those, like Samsung always just swaps in a picture of the moon from stock.
Right.
Doesn't it? That's what that was.
So what's interesting here is this is unprecedented, right? If I got that word completely out. This is unprecedented in the fact that personal devices are allowed at all. So we actually have a story about this. Personal devices on spacefaring crew missions, not really a thing. It took until the iPod for them to really allow it. And even then, it was in the 90s that a Mac Portable got put on board.
The first ever email. Yes, the first email from space was on a Mac Portable, which weighed more than the rest of the rocket. Okay.
Yeah, that thing was definitely, you had to get a workout carrying that around, just pushing the limits of portable.
I typed a friend's CV with that portable on my lap, crushing the blood out of my legs. Yes. Okay. Great keyboard.
So... very clacky, I'm sure. So yes, Mac Portable went to space, but before that, NASA has its involvements with Apple, of course. They had Apple IIs in the field, but never in space. Mac Portable, and then we saw a couple of other devices, a PowerBook, I believe, an iPod. So there is a history of Apple products going to space. But this iPhone does represent a change. The iPhone 4 was the only iPhone ever before to go to space, but that's when we were not really going very far. We would basically go in the upper atmosphere. We would exit Earth's atmosphere, but we wouldn't get anywhere near the moon. This was in like 2012, obviously. So we were just kind of going up there messing around. I think the International Space Station has also seen some devices like this, but they did video. They had an app for taking photos of the Earth on the space station and estimating elevations of certain things. Like that's a neat thing they did with the iPhone 4. But again, that was more for testing purposes. This is the first time ever that we've had personal photo and video devices on the space station. And when they come back, they're coming back as we record tomorrow, so Friday. They'll splash down, they'll get back here, they'll connect to Wi-Fi, they'll sync their iCloud, and boy, their social media is going to be crazy because they can show moments we've never seen before on a space. I'm sure they have some obvious restrictions from NASA, but and I'm sure everything they post is going to get vetted, but I just find it fascinating that the same phone that I'm using right now is in space taking photos. An iPhone has now traveled further than any other human has from the Earth. And I just find that all very fun.
Are there any Android phones? Are any of the astronauts Android phones? I don't think I know.
So as far as I am aware, no. It's very specific. They didn't just put out a bulletin saying, bring whatever you want. It was a very specific, delicate process, and I don't even think Apple was involved. I'm pretty sure what happened is NASA, the astronauts or someone made the request internally, like, hey, why not? Let's do this. And they had to go through a rigorous process of making sure that the phone wouldn't interfere with anything, yada yada. and the iPhone specifically got approved. And we've seen in photos from around the what is their pod called? Their pod has a name. Anyway, floating around the pod where the humans are, because the mission is the Artemis 2, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, in their pod, you can see iPhones floating around. It's crazy. While they're just chit-chatting, or taking mission logs and stuff, a phone will just fly by and it's an iPhone. Again, this is easy stuff for Apple to put in an ad somewhere. If they don't have it in a WWDC reel, I'm going to be very surprised. True. But very fascinating.
I can't resist the thought that maybe one of the astronauts is actually an Android phone, is having to use an iPhone, and is up there griping about Outlook isn't connecting or anything like that.
The Outlook thing is so funny. It's so funny. Yes. Okay. Everyone made the obvious joke of, look, they're just like us. They're astronauts. They train for years. They go to space. And they still can't use Outlook, just like me. I love the whole thing, and of course, the whole world's watching this mission because it is something about space and humans being there. It's just such a beautiful, wonderful concept because it's us breaking through our bounds, and it represents so much. Human history. We had some Canadians and Americans go up there, and it's just a very powerful moment, and very happy to see that it all went well, and they seem to be arriving back safely. So that'll be great. I'm excited to see them return. I'm sure they're excited to return as well because the toilet keeps breaking.
I heard about it, a $30 million toilet. Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm pretty sure there was a joke about that in The Big Bang Theory once, but okay. I tell you what, we seem to be focusing this week on the iPhone completely. How about, just to shake it up, we instead go to iPhone components, such as the processor in the MacBook Neo, because I love this story. I have so many friends that are considering the MacBook Neo who either weren't Mac users before or they would be, except the Mac was so expensive for it, so they were putting up with junk PCs, really. I mean, I'm not knocking. I will often knock PCs. I'm not knocking there. It's these ones, the affordable, cheap ones, were junk.
Budget PCs are actual garbage. They're actual trash.
Okay, I was trying to be fair there, but no, let's not.
I've kind of had this challenge putting feelers out various places, Discords, things of just show me anything that competes with the MacBook Neo, and it is impossible without at least getting to $1,000, and even then their processor's junk. Someone presented this ZenBook something, and the MacBook Neo beats it in single core by almost double, and the ZenBook has 16 CPU cores and the MacBook Neo has 6, and so obviously the ZenBook has better multi-core, but only because of the 16 cores it has available. It's madness, William. It's madness. How good this computer and how well designed this computer is. But
I hate to disagree with you, particularly when you're right, but you've forgotten something key there. That PC, the name of which I have already forgotten 10 seconds later, is apparently fractionally lighter than the MacBook Pro.
It's made of plastic.
That makes the difference.
So
yeah.
The story here is the MacBook Neo is a smash hit to the point that Apple is running out of binned iPhone 18 Pro chips. Now, to be very specific, the reason why one of the cost-cutting things that Apple did for the MacBook Neo is it went to its garbage bin.
Yes.
And it saw all these A18 Pros laying there, and they're like, what's all this? And they said, oh, those are the ones we can't put in iPhones. They're not good enough. They're missing a CPU core. Great, let's put them in our crap laptop. Okay. and that's the story. Great.
Right, they definitely use the word crap. I'm quite sure of that. Okay. You should explain, because I mean, I didn't know this. I kept hearing the term binned. It is everything you just said, but it's like the yield on the manufacturing. Some of them won't be right, some will. So normally
it's a double meaning, William.
Yeah,
it's binned because it's missing a core, but it's also binned because they put it in the bin. Haha. So the
bin there.
They had
okay, yeah.
They had a free stock of chips laying around that the MacBook Neo could use. They're running out. The binned chip stockpile is running dry, which means for the first time in, I don't know, 2 months, when did this thing come out? Not long ago.
Yes.
The first time in this thing's life, like, I don't know, a week ago, Apple's going to have to spend money to develop chips for it, which means it's going to be, it's not going to be as cost effective.
Oh, I wonder if it will wipe out the margins. That'd be funny.
I cannot. So this report hedges on Apple raising prices? No. There is zero world.
Not on this, no.
This iPhones, is not going to happen.
Okay.
So
what are their alternatives?
So what they've done apparently is they've worked out a deal to get another few million chips for as little money as they can. But after that's done, in another couple months, because again, those chips are just gonna they zip by. Apple's selling these things like hotcakes. They're gonna have to pay real money for a chip they don't even like, the A18 Pro, right? So, and they're gonna they're gonna make new chips and grab the bin ones. It's tough. There's also the conversation that I think is missing here is what chip is going to be in the next Apple TV. Because if I was Apple and I needed a reason to make new A18 Pro chips and balance the cost a little bit, I'd be looking at my, $200 Apple TV set-top box that definitely has like 98% margins, and use that as an excuse to make more 18 Pros. But we'll see.
It does feel like this means firing up an old production line when they've moved on to newer processors. And
because it's the A19 Pro currently.
Right. So spin up the A18 Pro and tell them, actually, if you don't do it very well, that's fine. We want the bent ones for it. Okay, why not just slip in the A19 Pro's binned versions and hope nobody notices? Because obviously nobody would.
That's a problem, just because they want to do that with the next one. So they're saving up all the binned ones for the next Neo. But the next Neos, they can't release them every month, William. That would be a thing, right? Like that's how good the market's gotten, is they can just put a new chip in every couple of weeks.
Okay.
I don't know. This is one of those silly things. This was presented as a kind of an Apple problem. I don't really see it as a problem. Apple has so many avenues for cost cutting and financially saving money that all they have to do is like, okay, yes, they have to spend some money on the A18 Pro, take it out of the battery, right? Like go to the battery manufacturer and be like, hey, give us less money, charge us less money for this. And they have no choice but to agree because Apple is their entire business, right? So they'll make it
concomitant rise in the need for batteries for it. So the success means greater buying power, as well as Apple being horrible.
It'll be fine.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I think this story was meant to say, potential, look out, potential price raise.
Buy a Windows
that was the point of the
PC
story.
instead, please. Yeah, that kind
happen.
of story. Okay. Mm-hmm.
All right, so I put this here at the end because I wasn't sure how long our show would be. So I want you to tell me what, and it auto-corrected again. It says Legato. Elgato Stream Deck. Did you have a problem with that, writing this review, auto-correcting to Legato? Because that's an annoying...
I didn't notice if it did. Whoops. I should go back and check.
Funny.
Oh, right. That's slightly worrying. Yeah, there may not be a link to that article in this show notes if I've got it wrong. Okay.
So do you have an Elgato Stream Deck Plus sitting in front of you right now?
Right in front of me now, I have the original Stream Deck, and I'm actually using it. If I cough or something, I push that button. If new chapter, put that button, just so I have a list at the end of when we need the artwork, all that sort of stuff. But the
do you
one
have
I reviewed,
a Mike just cursed button?
Why would... Once when Mike Worthley was on, I did actually add in a Mac startup chime. If I'd known I was going to need it, I could have had it on the button. Yes,
There you
but
go.
I didn't. Yes, you're thinking of this one. Got to reach past different Stream Decks. Actually, that's about as far as the wide will go. That's a Stream Deck with 8 buttons, 4 dials and a screen. And I kind of use that to control other things. The reason I did that as a review is it's actually been out a long time, but things are changing in the Stream Deck world. There's now a new version of that with 36 buttons, 6 dials, and nobody needs it at all, and everybody wants
You've
it.
bought two.
I'm
So-
strongly... If I could find somebody to sell one of these two, then I would be... Oh, flex. I don't know what it is. Yeah.
Do you use all 4 dials?
Yes, actually. First one's mute and volume for the system control. I have a button above it that I love that swaps between sending the music to the Mac Studio speakers and my headphones. So when I'm about to edit, just pass a button. Off I go. I have some lights that are controlled by it, and I've totally forgotten the third one. The third one along. I use it very often, though. I need more. Obviously.
You start turning the knob and it turns into one of those very, very British, like Mr. Bean skits where you turn the knob and it like opens a door and it hits someone in the face, and you turn the knob back and it slams it shut, and someone's trying to figure out who's controlling the store, and it's you playing with this knob on your Stream Deck. No?
Right. Okay. I didn't know where that was going to go there, but yes.
It's
that was
classic British humor, yeah. Anyway.
I do admire Rowan Atkinson and stuff like that. One thing I would say is I love Elgato's hardware. The buttons, the dial things, they're infinite scroll dials. So there's no start or end. You can just turn them up and down as you need, which means you're never looking for the start. It's just where it is, move it. And they're all buttons as well. And just, it's so well made. But the software tends to be a problem. So even today, with the Stream Deck controlling my lights, I had a Wi-Fi problem, and it said, well, you haven't got any lights, have you? And then when I fixed the Wi-Fi problem, it said... tough. So I reset them, and actually, right this moment, the lights are on, but the control isn't working on the Stream Deck. So it's not flawless.
But I just don't have a use for one. I'm primarily iPad. They kind of work with them. They kind of don't.
True. That's actually that's a failing. 2 years ago now, Elgato announced a program that would have it work with iPad, and it was so clever. It was on the Mac.
And then nobody
it
really did
works
it.
with the system. Yeah. On the Mac, it can be part of Mac OS, so these buttons, they can control any app you've got. They can send sequences. Great. On the iPad, it would have to work individually with each app. Each app manufacturer would have to sign on, and I assumed they would, but they didn't.
Not.
They didn't. But
all right, where are we on time? Because I don't have.
tell you in a flash. Oh, we're on an hour. Okay.
All right, so let's wrap up.
Well, I could actually go on and tell you about what each of the buttons do. I'll tell you one of them I love. One of them makes a huge, huge difference. And the reason, even if I do cave and buy the huge, enormous, big one, that I will never get rid of this, is that this now sits to the side of my keyboard. So trackpad to one side, this to the other. And there are controls in it I've set it up to control Logic Pro and Final Cut Pro, and my editing has sped up enormously, except I was on a different Mac the other day, and I couldn't remember how to do something because it didn't have my Stream Deck with it. So, yeah, but anyway, yes, that's quite enough about that, William. Email me if you want any more details about Stream Deck. Well, I say details. If you just want enthusing, email william@appleinsider.com. But that actually seems like a good time to say. I think we've had reviews this week. We haven't for a while, but do we have reviews, or am I making them up?
We do have
not
reviews.
Making them up, right? Yeah. What have we got? Are they good or bad?
All right, so
because if they're bad, we're running out of time.
Okay. So if you want to have your review read on the show, obviously all you have to do is go to Apple Podcasts and leave a review. Maybe you can make a button on your Stream Deck that will automatically leave a 5-star review every time you press it. So first, we got a 5-star review from The Little White Fern. Good show. Apple Insider is the only Apple news coverage I bother with these days. The sensationalism of the other sources drive me nuts. Had to chime in and let you know that Apple Podcast listeners haven't all died. Yes, they say this because last week I said that it had been 3 months since we got a review, so thank you for leaving that one. You definitely helped revive the feed because we got 2 more after that. So this one, I wanted to point out, this is the Great Scott. I've had a similar complaint to this in the past, so this is fair. I'm gonna say they're being fair, but I will say, email me or next time any listener has this specific complaint or currently has this complaint, let me know the specific thing I'm saying. All right, that is incorrect, because I want to know when I'm being incorrect. So this review is titled "The Android Ill-Informed Mentions Are Unnecessary," and it's a bit of a longer review. They direct this at me, obviously, and I'm saying that I need to stop discussing Android if all I'm going to do is spread misinformation and FUD, which is fear, uncertainty, and doubt. They began listening to AppleInsider after returning to iPhone after about 15 years of Android. And while they prefer Android, they use iOS as their daily driver. And they don't like how we're characterizing Android in the show. So, and they've even worked for Apple before. All right, so I'll say this. Look, thank you for leaving the review. It's 2 stars. It's fine. Again, this is something I want to address. It's not that I don't have an Android phone as a daily driver, but it's not that I never see Android. I am exposed to it all the time through various friends and family members who have questions. I interact with the modern systems. I see podcasts and YouTube videos and things of people who use these things and hear their opinions. And if I share something about Android, it's out of information that I have, not something that I've just made up on the spot because I don't like Android or something. So if I have said anything at all that mischaracterizes Android or is incorrect, I would love to know what it is so I can correct it on the show. So thank you for leaving the review. Reach out through my email, or next time any of you guys leave a review about this, say specifically what I'm saying incorrectly, because this review also was not specific. So just putting that out there. Finally, we have a 5-star review from developer's nickname. I believe this is a return. So the beginning of their reviews, I think the same text. This podcast is amazing. The second it comes out every week, I listen to it as fast as possible. William has quipped before, hopefully not too fast, because he does not sound good at 5x. So,
there's
but they asked,
an improvement. I accept that, but yes, okay. I don't like speed it up. Yes, okay.
Yeah, it's like chipmunk level of
yes, that's the word.
Speaking.
Okay.
So, when do you think the M5 Mac Mini will be released? William, do you have any input on this?
Is it giving away something that I've actually written an article about the M5 Mac Mini in the expectation that it will be out soon? I mean, obviously, until it's out, we don't know things. So it's just like the skeleton of it, what's expected and things, and then I will make it right before it goes out. But I was directed to do that just this week, so I'm highly confident it's coming very soon, and it's an exciting
time
Mac to get.
Like,
yeah.
It could just fall off of the back of a truck on a Monday. It's before WWDC is my guess, but when is harder to nail down. It could be April, it could be May, we'll see. But any time is the answer. And is it worth the upgrade? If you have an M4, no. There's some stuff in the M5 that isn't in the M4. There always will be. You have those neural operators on each core. Like, that's great if you're doing a lot of local AI. The people buying M4 Mac Minis for AI are going to go crazy over the M5 Mac Mini. Like, that's going to be the primary seller. I'll be surprised if they don't sell out immediately. So there is a reason to upgrade for very specific people, but general users, me, nah. My M4 is going to be fine. It'll be the same design, same ports, all that stuff. So anyway, finishing up, they said, thank you for making this podcast every week. It's the highlight of my week. It's signed Another Young Listener. Also, William, they want their 2 pence. So we'll get that in the mail very soon.
Oh, that's funny.
So yes, thank you all for leaving those very good reviews.
I started by saying where you can reach me, WilliamAppleInsider.com. We went into this. Before I ask you where you went, let's just check. You are in your new house, so it's presumably still settling in. Last week you admitted to having injury problems. Let's not be too specific there. Is everything fine and you're back blogging, for example?
I have been blogging. It's funny enough, because of this slow news week with Apple, other than iPhone Fold stuff, I have been struggling to find stories that Mike doesn't want to steal from me. So, for instance, the death of the iPhone Fold was one of the ones that was almost a blog post. Yeah, so it happens, and I don't begrudge him that I work for AppleInsider. The blog's a side project, so I still try to do it Monday to Friday. Sometimes Mondays are harder, so there's sometimes not a post Monday. But yeah, Hilly.tech is me on Blue Sky. You can find me at the Hilly Tech blog, which is also Hilly.tech. Doing that every day. Newsletters are on Fridays, and keeping that going. Please reach out to me on Blue Sky. You can tag me there, ask me questions. My messages are open. Always happy to hear from people who listen to the show. I get a few messages every couple of weeks from people commenting on the podcast, so always appreciate those. And of course, Wes at AppleInsider.com is my email if you want to reach out.
I've said it 3 times now. No, it's twice. I'll say it a third time. William at AppleInsider.com is probably the best for me, but I am also on YouTube at 58 Keys, and actually next week's edition is about what's going on with Kindle and what's being dropped off there. I'm trying to make that sound dramatic when actually it's mostly fine. Well, if you're not affected, you don't care. But if you are affected, there are ways around it. So, yeah, 58 Keys on YouTube. But that's that. This is this. I realise, actually, for all that we've talked about the iPhone Fold and things, there is something more to say. And we are intending to say it in AppleInsider Plus. Yet again, I love your ideas for AppleInsider Plus. This was your idea. Excuse me. AppleInsider Plus is the ad-free extended version of the podcast. So I'm about to shut up, but then if you're a subscriber through Apple Podcast subscriptions or through Patreon, then we just stick around and have a bit of a extra natter, in this case about...
So we're going to be talking about designing our perfect Apple foldable. If this thing's so crummy, as we described in the main show, what would make it good? What would make this an actually worthwhile purchase? So we're going to dig into what we want a foldable to be.
I'm terribly intrigued by this. I have thoughts, but I didn't think that you would. So this is going to be fun. That's AppleInsider Plus in a moment. So if you're already a subscriber, hang around for that. And if you're not, well, then you can subscribe. Obviously, it'd be great to have you. But otherwise, forget we mentioned anything. And let's just say thank you very much for listening. Thank you to our sponsors, Claude by Anthropic. And Wes and I will be back to chat again next week.